Okay, great. Well, good afternoon. We're having this media availability in this press conference because every single station is really called to want to know about the disciplinary review hearing today involving one of our police officers, Officer Cameron Caldwell, ID 7408. This morning, we had our disciplinary review hearing with the chain of command. The chain of command has unanimously sustained the following violations of Austin Police Department policy. Policy 206.4.1, control devices and techniques, chemical agent guidelines. The use of the pepper spray under the totality of the circumstances in this case was not authorized or consistent with our expectations or training as a police department. We also have sustained unanimously a violation of Austin Police Department policy 301.2, responsibility to the community. And we also sustained a violation of policy, Austin Police Department policy 900.3.2, general conduct and responsibilities, acts bringing discredit upon the department. The subject officer has agreed to a 45-day suspension, which is a agreed upon suspension. As you know, under 143 of the Civil Service Law, anything above 15 days must be agreed upon between the employee and the employer. The officer also must complete some additional terms and conditions and agreed to additional terms and conditions, which includes Officer Caldwell shall be evaluated by the Austin Police Department psychologists or qualified professionals designated by the chief. If the psychologist recommends a program of counseling, he must successfully provide complete the program of counseling. The officer must use it on his own off-duty time. Officer shall be responsible for paying the cost of the program. If he fails to complete the program at my sole discretion, he will be indefinitely suspended without the right of appeal to the Civil Service Commission or to an independent third party. If the evaluation and or program of counseling raises a question whether Officer Caldwell is sufficiently mentally or physically fit to continue the duties of a police officer, it would trigger the fitness for duty process set forth in Texas Government Code Chapter 143.081, and he will complete other training as prescribed to by the department. He will also be utilized as part of what we considered education-based discipline to, as directed, assist in cadet training. So the lessons that he's learned from his actions and in this case can be shared with others, and others can learn from this incident. He also agrees to a 1-year probationary period to begin the day he returns to work after serving his agreed suspension. If another violation similar in conduct occurs, he will be indefinitely suspended without the right to appeal during that 1-year period. He also knows that this suspension for purposes of any promotional exam in the future will be taken into consideration for bypass, consistent with the policy that I brought here a few years back. And actually there's a couple more conditions. It's important for the community to know that in this case, the subject, Mr. Wilson, was not cooperative and was actually acting violently in the back of that prisoner transportation van. This was all captured on our DMAP video. As you all know, the subject was ordered and asked several times by Officer Caldwell to cease and desist in terms of his violent behavior in the back of the van. And when Mr. Caldwell did not comply, the officer utilized pepper spray to gain compliance. Unfortunately, our department policy, although it does allow for the use of pepper spray on a restrained suspect, and this suspect had the handcuffs in front of him, so he wasn't completely restrained to the best of our ability, the hands in the back. Our policy also requires you to utilize other avenues to gain compliance other than pepper spray. And in this case, based on the totality of the circumstances, Officer Caldwell wasn't justified in the use of the pepper spray. That's why he's been suspended for a lengthy amount of time. And so with that, I will, then let me just say one other thing. One of the things that we look at as a police department, this officer's not been in any trouble. We've been looking to see if there's anything out there. We still haven't seen any other indication that this is a pattern on his part. In the disciplinary review hearing, he actually accepted full responsibility in terms of acknowledging what he did wrong. acknowledging that he had other options and avenues available to him to stop Mr. Wilson from continuing with his violent behavior in the back of the van, which included having other officers helping him apply leg restraints to the subject that we provide to our officers, and then securing him in a different manner. And he acknowledged other things he could have done differently. And so one of the things that I consider as a police chief when we are considering discipline is, will the behavior continue, or has the officer accepted responsibility? What is their history? What is the potential for this officer to be rehabilitated and continue forward? And I'm convinced that this officer will not be back. And if he is, and after a 45-day suspension, he will not survive anything even remotely close. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
So when this happens sometimes, whether it's in this department or other times, sometimes I hear officers say, you know, kind of off the record, like, oh, this is just happening because it's in the media. You know, this is just a high-profile case, and he feels like they have to be hard on this person because it was nationally covered. I mean, what would you say in response?
Well, I would say that a lot of folks that have that frame of thought that the officer is going to get fired. They're convinced he was getting fired. And I've been a police chief here for over 9 years. And I'm very proud to say that we've had plenty of instances go viral. Not proud to say that, but because of the nature of policing nowadays, where we're under the most scrutiny of any generation of police officers, there have been plenty of cases where community members or advocacy groups, this case being no different, where people want officers fired. They're not fired. We make our judgment. We make our decisions, not based on which way the wind's blowing, whether internally with the workforce and the cops, or the union, or externally with the community. We have to make it based on professional judgment. And in this case, the bottom line is that the very vast majority of actions taken by this police department when employees fall short are not a result of a citizen complaint. As a matter of fact, Mr. Wilson, to my knowledge, we still can't even find the subject in this case. He has not come forward, okay? The very vast majority of our cases where officers are suspended, it's not because it's in the media. It's not because it goes viral. It's because we have a process where we look at ourselves, we police ourselves, and the vast majority of our cases, if anybody wants to take a look over the last 9.5 years that I've been here as a police chief, the very vast majority of our cases are self-initiated by the Austin Police Department, because our review process, our assessment, and our team looks at something and deems it a violation of policy, and we take the appropriate action. And I would recommend that you go look at the last, I stand by that statement, go look at the last 9.5 years, and I can almost tell you that statement will, the evidence will show that that's not true, in fact true. What else?
You said pepper spray was inappropriate in this situation. What would be appropriate given the fact that the suspect wasn't complying?
Well, in that case, he had, what my expectation would be is, first of all, what are we going to try to accomplish here? And what he's using as an instrument to be violent are his legs. I mean, if you look at the video, he's kicking that door. We've had actual prisoners escape in the past from those vans that they weren't secured properly or whatever. He's at a Caritas location where we have a booking area. He had plenty of officers he could have called to help him, open the door, and then use numbers. And I need more officers to go in, pin the subject, maybe put him in a control hold, then apply the leg restraints, and then tie him out. He had other options that were available to him. And then you got to think about policing is ugly, right? I mean, even when we do things perfect, when you're trying to overcome resistance, it never looks good. And so in this case, his option that he should have utilized first was to control the subject with, and actually, let's immobilize the legs. And then once you pepper spray him, what happened? Did the guy stop? Does anybody know the answer to that?
No.
No, he did not stop. He continued to kick. You need to immobilize the legs, and that's the way we're trained. When people are using their legs, whether they kick at the officers or kick up equipment or kick out windows or do the things that people, when under the influence of alcohol or drugs or mental illness or just angry, you have to immobilize the legs. That's how we're trained, and that would have been the option that he should have utilized. If you look at it the way it looks now, it was just not the way to go. And he recognized that, to his credit.
you say that's how you guys are trained. How much do you take into consideration the split-second decision your officer has to make out there?
There was no exigency there. I mean, this wasn't a life or death situation. It's a guy in the back of a van kicking the van violently, but it was violent. But we train our officers to understand several things. And I have, personally have spent a lot of time personally talking to my officers about expectations. In policing, many, many times, and this case is no different, time is on our side. Numbers, which mean more officers, are on your side. Distance, cover, concealment are all on your side. In this case, there was no exigency, and if you look at the way he opened the door and said, hey, knock it off, I'm gonna pepper spray you, closes the door. Hey, knock it off, pepper spray you, closes the door. There was no exigency for him to just open the door, pepper spray, and then close the door. We've accomplished nothing, right? The guy just continued. We are better than that. Officer Caldwell is better than that. For those in the law enforcement, Officer Caldwell himself admits that he violated the policy in my hearing, and he himself admits that he should have followed these other protocols that he had available to him. That's why for the critics to say, well, you didn't fire him, my response is this. In the heat of the moment when you have a guy just kicking and screaming and acting the fool, he made a decision. It was the wrong decision, but what he has indicated to us through this process is that he gets it. And after we've spent all the money we spent as a community training this officer who, but for this instance, has actually done a pretty good job from all indications, we're going to save him and see the ball's in his court. He's demonstrated through this conduct today in our hearing that he gets it, and I'm willing to stand up for him and to save him.
So inevitably, when an APD officer does have to utilize pepper spray, in the near future, like, to clarify for the public and for officers as well, what is the right situation to use pepper spray?
You know what? Use of force and response to resistance is such a dynamic set of circumstances. We have these fights that break out on 6th Street where it's a big melee, and our officers, we've got critics that say the officers just pepper spray. Well, when you think about the thing about pepper spray in that circumstance, that people criticize that, what would they rather have? Officers pepper spray some folks and then everybody just starts dispersing and moving along with their day, or officers having to start fighting a group of people? Next thing you know, you've got 20 people or 10 people or 5 people all fighting a handful of officers. So every case is different, every instance is different. Our people are well trained, they're well equipped, and they know better. In this case, there was no exigency to just open the door, spray the guy. When he opened the door, the guy was just sitting there for that moment in time, right, for that second. There was really no exigency to spray him, and it was just not an effective way of doing police and business, and he knows it, and the officer gets it. So it's one of the reasons that he is going to remain a member of our department. They have to demonstrate to us that they can learn and they're trainable. In this instance, Caldwell did just that.
These 45 days without pay?
Well, it's a suspension, yes,
There's
it's
some
without
there-
pay.
there's some there.
People ask that every time. No, we're not sending him on a 45-day vacation. It's 45-day suspension.
Last question.
How long has he been with the department?
A little, I believe it's about 3 years. And let me just throw one other thing about 6th Street, ladies and gentlemen. 6th Street is a problem. It is a problem. We have got to take 6th Street back. People are going out there, they're acting a fool, they're getting drunk, they're coming out at bar closing, and we are going to start holding people accountable. One of the things that I will say about my police officers, for all their critics, is that they're very tolerant of a lot of behavior out there. And we need to start seeing people that don't go out, they go out there, get drunk and act a fool, go to jail. We saw a shooting where an innocent young woman was killed just a few weeks ago. Right? We don't need that stuff going on in our city, and we don't need it on 6th Street. And so it's a very challenging environment, and one of the things that I've directed my team to do is to start holding people accountable, and when people are breaking the law, we're going to stop being not quite as tolerant. And in this case, this man was arrested for PI, acted the fool, was violent in the back of that van, and we hold officers to very high standards in our department. We're not going to apologize that to the union. We're not going to apologize about that to the officers, because I know at the end of the day that most members of the Austin Police Department take great pride knowing that they work in an organization where they're held to a high standard. I absolutely know that. And so I take great pride knowing that I lead an organization where they've bought into that. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.